welcome back to Drinking by Myself. I am just drinking tea today because I have been drinking alcohol basically every day for the whole of January and my liver's just exhausted, so I'm sticking to some. This is my favourite pack of tea, the Love Potion tea. So I am Emma and this is my Balancing the Books for January. It feels like I only just filmed Balancing the Books. I guess I kind of did because I did my last one halfway through the month. So here we are again. I have an insane number of books to talk to you about in this video because January was like 3 years long, so I somehow managed to read and haul a lot of books in that time. If you're new here, Balancing the Books is the game where I tell you everything that came onto my TBR this month versus everything that went off my TBR, and I try and balance those numbers out. So at the end of December I owned 38 books on my TBR. Let's see what happened over the super fucking long month that followed. God, I can't even believe this was the same month. This feels like so long ago. The first book that I read in January, and therefore the first book that I read in 2020, was Writers and Lovers by Lily King. I absolutely loved this one. It's set in the 90s and it's a story of a young woman kind of in her early 30s. She's been trying to write a novel. She works in this restaurant and she just feels a little bit lost and directionless, and it's this incredibly relatable book, I found anyway. And it's basically, she meets a few different men over the course of the book. So it's kind of like this love triangle situation, but the romance isn't really the focus of it. It's more about the very different possibilities that each man represents in her life, the very different paths her life could take. So yeah, like I said, I think what made it so relatable isn't about the romance, so that is an element. It's more about the fact that you hit that age and the different paths your life could take become so drastically different. You get some people of that age who are settling down and getting married and having babies, and you get some people who are reaching new heights in their career, and there's so many options of what you're supposed to focus on, which is really quite stressful. So yeah, absolutely loved it, found it really, really relatable, really enjoyed the writing, really enjoyed the characters. It took me a while to get to understand them because while I said it's relatable, the main character is actually nothing like me. These are characters, her and her friends and the men that she meets are often people who take themselves quite seriously, which is very, very different from me and my friends. So they were very different from me, but actually I fell in love with them all. So yeah, absolutely loved this one. I can't remember if it was a 4 or a 5 stars, but it was very highly rated. Next, I read Shelter by Jung Yun. This was another brilliant book, though really, really sad. So this one starts with this incredibly violent crime that happens. It's really, really hard to read about. And our main character is called Kyung. And basically, he's at home one day and his mother, who lives quite nearby, but they have a really bad relationship, they're kind of estranged, she stumbles into his garden really, really badly beaten. And that's how he uncovers this terrible crime that's happened to her and to his father. And so the rest of the book is kind of exploring the tragic after effects of this crime. But there's like a lot of flashbacks, a lot of them going back and exploring things that happened to them in their past, why the family was estranged in the first place. And it's just like unrelentingly sad, really, but it's brilliant. Really, really good writing. It's a very thoughtful book. Then on Scribd, I listened to the audiobook of P.S. I Still Love You. So that is the second book in the To All the Boys I've Loved Before trilogy by Jenny Han. I am so excited for the film that's coming out this month now. It's coming out in like 10 days or something. I cannot wait. I have it in my diary planned with my friends that we're going to watch it the second it hits Netflix. So I absolutely loved that one. I may be on team John Ambrose McLaren now. I don't know. I love both of these boys so much. Then I read a book called The Dangerous Kind, which I then unhauled after I read it, so I don't have it here. It was a thriller. I quite enjoyed it. I gave it a 3 stars. It explored some really dark issues. So it's kind of about domestic abuse and violence against women. But it didn't really stand out. I didn't find it very memorable. So even though it was only like a few weeks ago that I read this book, I now can't remember very much about it to tell you. So yeah, not one of my favourites. I then hauled the ebook of Severance by Ma Ling, which I'm definitely going to then buy a physical copy as soon as I can get the paperback. It's a bit cheaper because I loved this one. It was 5 stars. So I definitely want to own it for my collection. So I hauled it and read it. This was a very, very strange book. And it sounds on paper like it would not be my thing because it's kind of a zombie novel, which is not my thing at all, generally speaking, but I loved it. So it's this satirical novel set before and after an apocalypse, and we flash back and forth between the two times. And the main character is called Clarice or Candace? Can't quite remember, but she's a young Chinese American woman living in New York, and that those sections, the kind of before sections, are just like this like normal, offbeat, quirky, like tongue-in-cheek story about this girl hating her job and navigating various romances, and it's just like really enjoyable. But then we keep flashing forward to after the apocalypse, where suddenly we have that same character like left fighting for survival and scavenging houses that are filled with zombies. But these zombies are totally different. They're never called zombies. It's totally different from what I have in my head of what a zombie is. They are called fevered, and they basically, I don't know if I should tell you how they work. It's really, really creepy what they are. It's very, very eerie, but they're not threatening. But they are, zombie novels I've heard are kind of always supposed to be like a satire of humans, like our kind of modern world, how we get stuck and repeat and kind of soullessly do the same actions. I think that's what zombie novels are kind of always satirizing, so this was the same, but it was just a very unique way of having these zombies. They were just like, it was very different and really effective, and I really, really liked it. And like slowly as the timelines come together, because we do then see bits of the main character's life during the apocalypse when people start fleeing New York, and she stays for a long time, and then we start to kind of see more and more of the similarities between what she's doing and what the zombies are doing. Yeah, it was really, really clever, fun book to read. So 5 stars to a zombie novel, who knew? That's 2020 for you. Then I bought myself this series, the To All the Boys I've Loved Before series. So I don't add any points to my TBR for these two because I'd already read them. I just wanted to own the physical copies. But this one, Always and Forever, Lara Jean, I have not yet read, so this adds 1 to my TBR. And I'm not going to read this one for a while. I was planning to buy it and read it immediately, but I now have a plan for this book. So that's all I'm going to say on that, but I will read it in a few months. Another rehaul, a book that I already read but I just wanted to own physically, is We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shelley Jackson. I read this one in December, I think, and I loved it. And another rehaul, these are all not adding to my score, so that's good. I bought My Sister the Serial Killer by Lincoln Braithwaite because I had listened to this one on audiobook. Absolutely recommend this one. This was a 5-star book for me last year. Okay, then I DNF'd a book, so I've already given it away, and that was Nina Is Not Okay by Shappi Khorsandi. I talked about this one a bit in my Trash My TBR video of why I DNF'd it. I think it was a good book. It's not a complaint about it, it's just not the kind of book that I want to be reading right now. I don't tend to like teenage protagonists. I know I just have been raving about the To All the Boys I Loved Before, but often I don't. And she's a teenager with drinking problems, and there's just like a lot of quite graphic descriptions that I just was not enjoying, so I gave that one away. Okay, then I hauled Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Everest. So this is obviously the book that won the Booker Prize, the one that most deserved to win the Booker Prize, and I read it straight away. I absolutely loved this one. This was another 5-star read. It's about 12 different characters, mostly women, mostly black, and their intersecting lives, and I absolutely adored it. It reminded me a bit of 3 Women, which is a non-fiction book that I loved last year, which was much more divisive. A lot of people didn't like that one, and I would say that this is better, even though I gave them both 5 stars actually. I loved the way that they are, each chapter follows a different character, and they're not all related, they don't all know each other, but there's just like little threads that run through, pulling them all together. We actually had a book club about this one at work and all loved it, and it was so much fun getting to talk about it and talk about who our favourite characters were and stuff. Really, really big recommend to this one. Okay, another DNF next. This is The Comet Seekers by Helen Sedgwick. I also talked about this one in Trash My TBR because it was one that didn't get encouraged to trash and probably should have because I DNF'd it like halfway through. It sounds like it could have been a book I loved, but it just wasn't quite. It's kind of like One Day by David Nichols, and it like checks in at certain periods of time. But what it does in this one is it's every time this comet flies close to Earth, that's when we get a snapshot of the characters, or even like, it's different characters over time because they're like hundreds of years apart often. But we do have 2 main characters that we're following and kind of their family histories. So it's such a beautiful idea, but it just didn't work for me. It's slightly too weird. One of the love stories that we're introduced to quite early on is between 2 cousins, and I was like unsure if I was supposed to be on board with that, and I think I was supposed to be on board with it, but I wasn't, so that put me off quite a bit. And yeah, it's just like a really, really beautiful concept that I couldn't put my finger on why it wasn't working for me, but I got like halfway through and then just had no desire to continue. Next, I read a book from my TBR that I absolutely loved. This was Love is for Losers. I had brought this one home back in December, I think. So this is a YA novel. Again, another exception to me saying I don't like reading about teenage protagonists. I loved this one so much. It reminded me a lot of the Georgia Nicholson books I loved when I was growing up. It's like that meets Sex Education, meets like Fleabag for teenagers. It's fantastic. Our main character is this brilliant teenager called Phoebe, and it's like in the run up to her GCSEs. Her mum is this like activist who is always away, so they have quite a difficult relationship. Her mum's off like doing all these incredible things, like traveling to Syria, but not being there for her daughter, which her daughter finds really hard. So she lives with this like kind of foster mother-esque, who's her mum's best friend, called Kate, who's wonderful, and I loved that relationship. I always love like quasi parent-child relationships in books, and that was brilliant. And Phoebe thinks that love is for losers. Her best friend's got a boyfriend and it's super boring, and even Kate gets a boyfriend and she finds that super boring. So she's totally taken by surprise when she falls in love with a girl that she meets at her volunteer job called Emma, and I loved it because she had my name. And it was just really, really sweet, really, really fun. A really like modern, fresh update on some of the books that I compared it to that I read when I was younger, because like the fact that her friend has sex with her boyfriend is never, it's never this big like massive change in her life. It's quite like matter of fact, but she still explores like some of the problems that she's having and the questions that she has about it, but it's not turned into this big like she's a different person now. And the same with the fact that our main character falls in love with a girl she'd never considered before that she might be gay or bi, but it's not this like massive turning point. She's just like, oh okay, cool. I just really, really liked the way it was explored. I thought it was perfect. Then I hauled some books. So I hauled The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I've seen this one all over BookTube. I'm going to be reading this one this month for Thrillerathon, or at least I'm going to try. I don't know very much at all about what it's about, other than that it's got a book with a twist that a lot of people have been saying is good. So hopefully I'll really enjoy that twist. I hauled this. I took this home from the office. This is You Are Not Alone by Greer, Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. Again, I'm going to try and read it for Thrillerathon. So these two, this is their third book they've written as a pair. They wrote The Wife Between Us, which I didn't really enjoy because I guess the twist in that kind of ruined it. They wrote An Anonymous Girl, which I enjoyed a lot more, but still didn't love. But there is something about them as a pair that even though I haven't yet rated any of their books particularly highly, I really like enjoyed them like as a premise. So I'm still really, really excited for this one. So high hopes. I left one of my books up on the shelf, hang on. I hauled Our Dark Secret by Jenny Quintana. It's another one I took home from work, and another one that I'm planning to read in the Thrillerathon. This one's got all of the ingredients that I like in thrillers really. It's about friendship between two girls. They share this dark secret. We've got parallel timelines. We're going to go back and see what happened to them in the 70s, back when they were these friends called the Crazy Girls, versus now with the secrets that they're hiding. Like, it's just got all the ingredients that I love really. Okay, the next book I hauled was this one, American Pop by Snowden Wright. So I wasn't sure whether or not this would count as a rehaul that wouldn't add to my TBR because I've already read it or not, because I read this one back. I used to work for a literary agency for a while, and so I read a really early version of this book back then that was on submission. I have no idea how much it's changed. I loved it when I read it. It was like a 5-star book for me. A very unusual book, one that I imagine would not be for everyone because it's fiction, but it's written as if it's non-fiction. So you don't get these like delving into the characters' minds very much. It's written as if it's this like history of this family who founded a massive like rival to Coca-Cola basically. And you jump around, you're constantly jumping around different time zones. It's like a very strange reading experience, unlike anything I've had before. So I can imagine that not everyone would love it, but I absolutely loved it. And I'm really, really intrigued to see how much of it has changed. So I decided this is going to count as if it's like hauling a new book. I'm adding it to my TBR because it might be totally different. But I hope they haven't taken away all the stuff that I loved about it. Then some rereads. I reread these 3 books, so that did not affect my TBR at all. I'm not going to tell you much about them because I've got a whole video devoted to talking about these, which will go up I think in a few days. You'll see it soon, so just hang in there for that one. I'm not going to tell you why I reread them. You'll see the theme when it appears. A video you can watch right now is I reread the entire Series of Unfortunate Events series, and actually some of those weren't rereads, but annoyingly they don't make a difference to balancing the books because I'd never added them to my TBR in the first place, which was a little bit sneaky. I probably should have when I bought them, but I didn't. So I read 13 books in 24 hours, which was just insane, and it made no difference to balancing the books. And I read these 3 as well at the same time, so that's like 16 books that made no difference this month. And then finally, one last haul. I have got the audiobook through Scribd of Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. This is one that I'm reading with my book club in real life. I'm a little way through it at the moment. I'm not loving it so far. I wasn't expecting to love it. It's kind of like sci-fi dystopia, which isn't generally my favourite. And it's got a lot of, our main character does a lot of questioning of religion and kind of coming up with like her own version of religion. And it's just, I don't find that terribly interesting in the book. So I'm not gripped, but I'm slowly working my way through it. If I have added that up correctly as I go, I think I am now on 38, which is exactly where I started, which is wild considering how many books I read this month. I think I've read 22, 23 books in January, and yet I've made absolutely no dent on my TBR. But it does mean that I can say my books for January are balanced. So do let me know what you've read this month, and of course give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and hit that subscribe button below for new videos every week. See you next time. Oh, I better finish my tea before it goes cold. See you next time.